My paper is titled Modern Alaska Native Subsistence. The primary themes are how Alaska Natives subsist today and how their subsistence habits have changed, as well as how the socio-political landscape impacts subsistence behaviors. The main subjects are the amount of indigenous food consumed, the political landscape that has put limitations on what quantities of natural resources are attainable, and the increasing cost to subsist, and the way the increasing cost to subsist has altered subsistence patterns and the prevalence of subsistence. The first article is titled The Cooler Ring. And I'll start off with a quote. Thinking through my exasperation with cooler logistics forced me to come to terms with the cooler's true significance as an apt, if ungainly, metaphor for centrality of subsistence, both practice and product, to urban Alaska Native women. And this quote is about Lee's experience doing an exchange route with her Alaska Native friend Flora Mark, who creates art with natural resources. And the big focal point of the article was that changing legislation could jeopardize this cultural activity, and the way that it would do that is Flora Mark is making a living off of her arts and crafts, and the change in legislation would be mitigating the ability of people that are living in a city from attaining these subsistence resources. So she would not be able to bring these things home with her. She would not be able to create the arts and crafts that she does. In addition to this, the funds that she gets from this is what puts her kids through college. It's also a means when she goes around and she's collecting these things, she's not only getting the resources to make her arts and crafts, she's actually also collecting food as well, which she uses in a cultural sense, and she has potlatches, and she has meals with friends that she has visit. And so it's just a big cultural event centered around this food. So if she loses the food, she loses the other resources. She's going to be out of money, and she's going to be out of touch with her culture. The next one is Alaska Inupiat Subsistence and Wage Employment Patterns, Understanding Individual Choice. The author Kruse addresses Inupiat subsistence activities in the North Slope Borough. The earnings of other household members conceivably may meet household income requirements, making it easier for household members to pursue subsistence activities. On the other hand, the wage employment activities of other household members may present a role model that leads individuals to work as well. Living costs are also high on the North Slope, and the pressures for multiple incomes must be at least as high as they are anywhere in the United States. So the big takeaway from this piece is that subsistence patterns are changing by necessity. The need to have cash flow income in these households has created the demand to work the wage labor. But at the same time, there are also other members of the household that are involved in subsistence activities, so you've got them dabbling in both spheres. The next topic is nutrient intakes are associated with adherence to a traditional diet among Yup'ik Eskimos living in remote Alaska Native communities, CANHRs. Bersamin and her colleagues conducted a survey that gathered data about Alaska Native food consumption in regard to traditional food versus non-traditional food consumption. In the present study, the diet of Alaska Natives living in the isolated coastal and riverine communities was more dependent on traditional foods than the diets of those living in the small city. Big topic is not only is cultural engagement different by location, but by age as well. So those living farther away from those kind of wage labor situations are needing to be more dependent on subsistence activity in order to survive and make it through the year. The farther out you are, the farther away you are from so many different types of jobs where you can actually get cash that it's an absolute necessity to subsist. But it's also pointing out other things, such as the fact that younger people are culturally engaged in a completely different way, perhaps less so. So they have a different diet. And then the other notes from the field. Argetsinger and West note an incredibly important piece of legislation that has impacted resource management regarding Alaska Native land. The need to settle land claims with Alaska Native groups in order to develop oil led to the passage of ANTH, Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, in 1971. Unlike most federally recognized tribes whose reservation lands are held in trust by the federal government, ANTH authorized Alaska Natives to be paid $965.2 million and to select 44 million acres of federal land as compensation for Congress's permanent extinguishment of their Aboriginal land title, hunting, and fishing rights. ANTH also requires that the funds be used to create 12 for-profit Alaska Native regional corporations. And the big takeaway from this is that this is a massive change. Politically, it's a massive change socially. And it has, clearly wide-ranging benefits and defects. It's part of that the whole transition to like a wage market, dealing with money. The corporations are for profit, so they're trying to turn something out of it. They're trying to use the land in ways in which there is a gain monetarily, which previously wasn't considered, and wasn't considered a necessity until more recent times. One interviewee voiced the concern that there are typically two pulses of kings on the Kuskokwim, and the first is weaker than the second. Because of the timing, the first pulse may reach upriver villages at precisely the time the second is arriving in the Bethel area. Thus, the commercial fishery will be open downriver, while the subsistence fishery will be closed all along the river. This leaves upriver communities unable to get their catch of kings. So with the way that the politics are set up based on what had occurred with ANTH before and where we are now, it's illustrating that everybody can engage in this commercial activity. Everybody can be engaged in the money-making process of this. Wonderful, but the individuals that are trying to subsist off of those fish upriver are unfortunately losing out. So, hurrah for the corporations being involved in the cash economy, but I think it also influences decisions and the way that they're battling other legislation in order to get access for these people, such as those that are upriver, that are just simply losing out. From crisis to cumulative effects, food security challenges in Alaska. Fazzino and Loring state these country foods, fish, moose, caribou, whale, walrus, etc., play various roles in the health of these people and their communities with procurement, preparation, storage, and distribution of these foods, each representing important social and cultural moments in local foodways. For instance, hunting, fishing, and preparation activities have been shown to provide an important sense of role and responsibility within families and communities and serve as central aspects of childhood and pedagogy. So this is showing why the preservation of these subsistence activities is vital to Alaska Native communities. Not only do these subsistence activities create the community and perpetuate the community, but they're providing, as stated, the essential aspects of childhood, the ways that they grow up. So if you want the community to continue and to prosper, the children need to be actively engaged with in order to understand the social rules and how they need to get along. And also, the literal how-to on how do you skin this animal, how do you craft this boat, how do you maintain these things. And the pedagogy goes along with that. What is your hierarchy? What is the structure of the culture? And what is your place in the culture? And without immersing yourself in that culture, you will not know. So that is the significance. The legal protection of subsistence, a prerequisite of food security for the Inuit of Alaska. The Inuit systems of food production and distribution are characterized by a small proportion of households handling the majority of the harvests, often referred to as super households, and by extensive cooperation among households in the production of subsistence foods. For example, while 63% of households in the Arctic region of Alaska harvest game, a much higher percentage, 90%, are actually given access to the game through traditional food circulation channels. The figures are similar with respect to fish, which is harvested by 78% of households and made available by family and community networks to 96% of households. So this ties into Kruse's paper about wage employment offering support. So you can see that while maybe not all houses are engaged in the subsistent activities, many, not quite all, reap the benefits. So, those super households are the ones that are getting the subsistence activity done, and the other households are likely engaged in the wage employment system. Conclusions. This Inuit system of sharing subsistence food with the community seems to mirror the case with the Inupiats living in the North Slope Burrow. Those who are interested in subsistence resources, even if they're forced into a wage system, will find a way to take part in that culture despite political and perhaps even geological obstacles, as seems to be the dual case for those living upstream from the Kuskokwim, as well as flora visiting from the city. Alaskan natives have been forced from a system of exclusive subsistence to some jigsaw puzzle of wage work and subsistence that sometimes merge in interesting and mutually beneficial ways, but don't always. They're adapting to a market that is influenced by forces across the world and doing their best to hold on to their food, their history, culture, and spirituality at the same time in everything that they do. The political landscape and development of Alaska Native corporations have and will continue to shape the way that finite subsistence resources are managed.